Welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over this SAT percent problem. And once again, thanks to Anico.ai for providing this specific question in their free resources tab. But before I dive into the explanation, please give this a try yourself. Okay, so how do you approach this problem? Well, if you saw the title of this video, it's called Read and Write, right? And you do that repetitively. So what I'm trying to convey there is that for these percent problems, right, the usual method is to take each phrase and translate it into a mathematical statement as you read the problem. So let's start. So here we have three solutions, D, E, and F, right? Concentrations of three solutions, where D is the parts per million for D, and likewise for E and F. So right away, I would just write like D, E, and F as variables over those solutions, right? Over those three solutions. Now, let's look at what else they give us, right? If the concentration of solution D is 125% of the concentration of solution F. Well, how do I translate that into a mathematical statement? Well, concentration of solution D, well, we already know that, right? That's D. It tells us, right, in the problem that the concentrations for D were D parts per million. And that's why I wrote the variable in the first place also, right? So essentially, from that blue statement, we have the variable D is, so that's equals 125% of the concentration of solution F. So it's 125% of concentration of solution F, which again is a variable F. And to simplify this even more, right, 125% of F, that's the same thing as 1.25 times F. Okay, let's read again and translate the next phrase, mathematical phrase, into an equation. So now we have that the concentration of solution F is whatever that percent is of the concentration of solution E. So how do we translate that into an equation? Well, once again, right, we do F and then is, so that's equals 0.006%. So I'm going to write that first. Make sure you're writing the number of zeros properly, because when you're on pressure on time, kind of mess that up sometimes. But percent of the concentration of solution of E. So this is that of E. How do I write this into a, how do I simplify this? Well, this is just going to be F equals 0.006% of E. So what I'll do is write, whenever you see like a percent, right, just do divide by 100, right? And of course, of E means times E, right? So times E. So now we have two equations here, right? That one for D equals that, and F equals the whatever that is times E. What are we trying to find, right? Once again, right, we're reading the next part of the problem and trying to translate it. So we're trying to find which expression represents the value of D plus E in terms of F. Notice they're asking us for the value of D plus E, right? So I'm going to write D plus E here. That's what we're trying to find. And it says in terms of F. What that means is that the parts of this expression have to have an F in them, right? And only an F. So for D, for example, right, we know D is equal to 1.25 F. So I'm going to substitute that here, right? So we have 1.25 F, right? That's D. Plus, what is E in terms of F? Well, we know that F equals that times E, but we have to find it in terms of F, right? We have to solve for E then, right? So let's divide each side. And if you divide each side by this value, you should get the value of E in terms of F. So that means if you do F divided by 0.006 over 100, right, that gives you E. And see, right, now you can solve for E in terms of F. And let's right here, right, let's write that here because we found that value. So we have that plus E, which is, I'm just gonna copy and paste this, right? But now, right, we should actually have everything in terms of F, right? Because look, we found D in terms of F, and we found E in terms of F. So what do we do now? Well, let's just add these two together, right? And this is where I'm kind of going to use, well, I'm going to actually simplify this first, right? So you don't have to do this, but 1.25, I just know, like that's 5 over 4, right? Once again, you don't have to like translate it into a fraction, but that's 5 over 4, and then plus, and this part here, right? I just know because, you know, mental math through mental math, I can say, well, okay, this is just going to be 100 or 100,000 over 6 times f. Right. So if you see here, I'm just translating everything into a nice fraction, right, or a nice improper fraction. And once again, you don't have to do this, but I like doing it because it just makes it easier for me, right? Or it just makes more sense to me. But now we're trying to find which of these answer choices, right, represents that value of d plus e. Well, you'll realize that all these answer choices only have one fraction in them, right? So that means we have to probably combine these two fractions together. And if you use decimals for that, right? Well, first of all, you know that this is 5 over 4 plus 100,000 over 6 times f, right? I'm essentially just factoring that f out, right? So if you decimals here, you get 5 over 4 plus 100,000 divided by 6. And at first you might like start panicking because you see a decimal answer, but once again, right, there's this fraction button that is really nice. It's pretty cool actually that it converts it into a fraction, but yeah, right, you have that fraction value now, which is 200,015 over 12, and then times that f, right? And once again, all of this, right, equals to d plus e, so I'm just going to write that d plus e equals this. And that's our answer, right? That's going to match with answer choice A here. So that's essentially it, right? For these percent problems, what I want you to do is take each mathematical statement as you read the problem and translate it into a equation or expression, right? That's why I call this method read and write, right? Read and write, because that's what you're doing. You're reading a phrase one at a time and you're writing the mathematical equivalent, and then you're doing that again and again, right? So hopefully this made sense, and if it didn't, of course, leave any questions you have down in the comments. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We post videos here daily to help you guys on your SAT or ACT prep. So if you want to be notified when they come out, please hit that notification bell. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.